Good morning, Sunnyvale. Welcome. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's get started in just a moment. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Get started in just a second. Good morning, Sunnyvale. Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, Sunnyvale. Happy Friday. Welcome to the end of March. You know, this year is just flying by, so we're finishing our first quarter, but welcome to my weekly virtual office hours. You know, this week's early artwork is another from our new City Hall. So this is basically, let's say, an Indian-inspired work, kind of the tree of life. We have actually several trees as part of the design for some of the art that we commissioned at our new City Hall. So you know, if you get a chance, definitely go by and take a look. But let's go ahead and get started. You know, good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thank you for joining me again this week. You know, we have another short break from the rain. You know, we've had another rainy week as far as that's concerned, but happy that we have a sunny day. Looks like a sunny weekend. This is the 158th installment of my weekly virtual office hours. You know, hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, staying dry. You know, we've now reached 1,110 days since the March 16th, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. You know, it was just over 3 years ago that I converted my weekly coffee shop office hours into this weekly live stream address. And except for a week of surgery, I haven't missed a week since. Probably, you know, next month, as we go into April and spring break, I'll probably be taking a little more time off, have, you know, short vacation planned, and you know, so definitely we'll have these a little less frequently. I'll try to do updates where I can, but you know, for me, it's important to take a mental break. The last 3 years have not been easy, but you know, thanks for everyone who continues to join me for you know, for these sessions, whether or not they're watching it live or watching it time delayed. You know, people still tell me they appreciate hearing from their mayor, and you know, and getting those updates, you know, answering some of your questions. I'm able to reach a lot more people than I can over a few hours at a local coffee shop. But you know, these updates really give me a chance to talk about some of the upcoming events, you know, answer your questions, talk about all the great things that are happening in the city. Oh, that's interesting. I can't tell if we're still streaming. I can't, looks like it had a little glitch there, but I think we're still going. Anyway, so if you would like to meet with me, you know, you can always email me at council@larryklein.com. You know, for me, it's really important to continue meeting with people, talking with people, hearing your concerns, hearing your great ideas. You know, I've been doing my office hours in some form for more than 6.5 years while on council. And it's really a great way to meet people, get people more involved as far as that's concerned. But you can always take a look at what my office hours are, or find out more information about me or how to get involved at my website, larryklein.com. And, and it's, you can see my background if you have, and things that's upcoming from a city standpoint. So let's go ahead and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. Last Monday was the first day of spring. And so, spring is really a time of rebirth and new beginnings. So, I've been attending lots of spring celebrations. Spring is the new year in multiple cultures and traditions. So, I attended over the last 2 weeks, I've attended, holy festivals, a Nowruz event, an early Passover event, several others. And it's really great to be in the community celebrating kind of the rebirth and new beginnings. And, last Monday was also a new beginning for the city. Our new LEED Platinum Net Zero City Hall officially opened. And although, there's still a lot of work to be done, staff is still unboxing their equipment. We're still fixing IT issues as we get settled into the new space. But it is open to the public. So if you need, a planning permit, if you need to pay your utility bill, you can go visit that. It's a beautiful building. There's underground parking, although it's limited to, I think, about 87, 90 spaces. You can park at the library. There's lots of operations going on. We put up the fences around the old Sunnyvale office park, and moved Nova into that new building. But ultimately, we won't be there. We won't be holding, meetings in the council chambers for a few months, but everything else is open. We've been adding new art. So every floor has a piece of artwork. And that's one of the pieces of artwork that I have behind me today. So this, I think, is the artwork on the 4th floor, where the office of the city manager, the office of the city attorney, as well as HR and the mayor's office is. So if you get a chance, definitely take a look at that piece of art. But it is really amazing to see the building and everything that's there. From that standpoint, it's been it's a mixture of this modern innovation amongst all the redwoods. And so they took actually out a few redwoods when they were building the building, in order to put in the basement. And one of the things that we've been able to do is repurpose so much of that redwood. So you can see redwood benches, redwood end tables, really big redwood conference room tables around the building. So lots of things, lots of wood. If you take a look at this, especially the stairwell that goes through the center of the building, it feels like a museum from that standpoint. And so it is truly iconic. It's an amazing site from that standpoint. But staff has been working 12-hour days for the last few weeks to get things stable for people to move in, and they're still working overtime to make sure that the new building, there's always new issues as people move in, something not working correctly. So it'll be a few months before things are completely stable, but happy that people are able to attend that, see that. And, from that standpoint, it's truly impressive what we've been able to accomplish here as in the heart of Silicon Valley. So, and then last Tuesday, since our new City Hall chambers isn't ready, we took the show on the road to the Washington Park Swim Center. It was, at 6:45. So we started a little early, and we recognized all the Santa Clara Valley Science and Engineering Fair Association award winners. So these are all students from Sunnyvale schools that had done some amazing projects, as far as that's concerned, to highlight, different fields from mathematics to biology to chemistry, computer science. I was really impressed with all the different projects. I met some of the parents, I met some of the students, and it was really a great evening to kick off. And then for as far as the main meeting, we had several special orders of the day for April, which is Fair Housing Month. So we declared, April is Fair Housing Month. We had a recognition for Arbor Day. And then, of course, April is Earth Month. So lots of environmental friendly events coming up this month, and happy to highlight that. And we'll be talking about that a few minutes later. And then as far as general business, we spent a lot of time selecting the preferred alignment for the Stevens Creek Trail. And so, where the trail ends now is at Dale Heatherstone. And what we're looking at first is Mountain View's segment. I was part of the Joint Cities for Cities Citizens Advisory Commission back in 2012, 2013. Ultimately, we figured out kind of a general path for the next steps of the trail after having hundreds and hundreds of comments from residents. But Mountain View is in charge of from Dale Heatherstone to Remington, and then Sunnyvale is in charge from Remington to Fremont Avenue. And so what we ended up doing was approve the kind of two exits, one on the east side and one on the west side of 85. And ultimately, from that standpoint, we gave some direction to look at improving the intersections for bike and ped at Bernardo and Fremont Avenue, looking at a potential different route for the west side when we're talking about being closer to the creek. And how you connect up to Bellevue and Fremont, and making sure that intersection is good, prioritizing the improvements of those intersections, as well as looking at a potential bike pedestrian bridge over Fremont Avenue, and having some discussions with Caltrans about that, whether or not they'd be interested, whether or not VTA would be interested in funding that study. So but ultimately it was important for that project to move forward as quickly as possible. It's been a long time coming, and the sooner we can create that path, the safer it is for everyone. And there's actually about 22 acres of open space there that people don't have access to right now. And so it would be fixing some of that riparian wilderness, as well as making it available to residents. So if you go farther up Stevens Creek Trail, you can kind of see some of the areas where they've actually fixed some of that open space, so that it's a better it's a better open space at the end of the day. Native plants, and making sure that the creek bed is better supported, and all those sorts of things. So looking forward to seeing next steps of that. Staff will go off and do further design and have discussions with Caltrans and VTA. We also approved our Housing Element 2022 annual progress report. And, from our RENA allocation, so that's a regional housing needs allocations, we have built as many units as we were expected to build over the last 8 years. The only problem, of course, is we don't have enough affordable housing. We do 15% of all multifamily apartments, and for sale units are now inclusionary, have inclusionary requirement that they need to be affordable in some way, whether or not low, very low, or moderate, depending upon what the housing type is. But we can only do, and we get some 100% affordable housing. But from a zoning standpoint, we have plenty of zoned housing, but ultimately it's trying to get developers, and mainly helping to fund affordable housing nonprofits to build that affordable housing. And then we also abolished the Board of Building Code Appeals. It was one of our commissions, boards and commissions that we've had for years, but ultimately they haven't met in 20 years, other than to appoint a new chair and vice chair, which is kind of amusing. It's like, okay, we and have a certain amount of training. In general, we've had very few issues from that standpoint of developers wanting to appeal some decision made by city staff or the planning commission. So it's actually been very good from that standpoint. And so we ended up abolishing that board, and then any decisions that will be made or would have been made by that board would ultimately go to council itself. So it was important to not waste staff's time doing basically recruitment for one of the organizations or one of our boards and commissions that basically never meet. So it was good from that standpoint to simplify things from a city standpoint. And then as far as the end of the meeting, we closed the meeting in honor of Roy Rockland, who was a Fremont Union High School district trustee who passed away a few weekends ago. And I was really saddened to hear about Roy's passing. He was just a very friendly, very quiet, but very thoughtful and straightforward person. He had led an interesting life. He had a PhD in chemistry, and after about 25 years in the industry, he decided that he wanted to quit and actually become a teacher for chemistry and physics. He taught at Lynbrook High School, and it was he was just a pleasure to work with, and really cared about the students, really cared about the high school district. He was a big volunteer for the high school district foundation, raising funds, and he'll definitely be missed as being part of our community. So my thoughts and our prayers for all council go out to him and his family, for him and his family. It was really sorry to hear, and the high school district is currently looking at conceivably appointing someone. So there was a meeting last week, and I think this week, I've lost track of my meetings, where they'll be appointing someone for the remainder of his term, and they'll also upcoming be transitioning the district. So lots going on there, but he will be missed in our community, to say the least. And then last Wednesday, Governor Newsom delivered his State of the State letter to the state legislature. Normally he would have a State of the Union type address, so State of the State address to the legislature. This year he decided to do kind of a tour of the state. So he went from Sacramento to the Bay Area to LA to San Diego, and ultimately, highlighting his view of upcoming initiatives that he would like to get done, and then kind of his victories over the last 4 years. But it was the first time that a governor had basically said, here's a letter on what the state of the state is to the state legislature. So kind of interesting from that standpoint. Last Friday, 20 students from our sister city in Isuka, Japan, arrived in Sunnyvale for the week. And so, we're celebrating 10 years of that relationship between Isuka, Japan and Sunnyvale, California. And, it was great to see meet the chaperones, meet some of the students. We had about, we had 20 students that were hosted by families that some of them sent their kids to Japan last year. And this year they're hosting, and we'll have another contingent of students that will be going to Japan in June. So lots coming up this year. There'll be the mayor from Isuka. So the vice mayor from Isuka was here, but the mayor will be here in August, and there'll be some more celebrations in August. And then I'll be going to Japan in October. So lots going on this year to celebrate that city, sister city relationship. And we have Sunnyvale is kind of unique because we have a friendship city. So we it's kind of the precursor to becoming a sister city. And we've had several friendship cities in the past, but we only have this Japanese sister city now. And it's thanks to that sister city association that gets funding to make sure that there's that cultural exchange of students and bridging, moving forward, bridging that communication is really critical, and hearing from the students, like building those relationships that'll last for probably the rest of their lives for a lot of these families. So it was really great to see as far as that's concerned. Actually, let me go ahead and fix my background. Try not to keep the mural background the entire meeting. So yes, I am in my office, although it is kind of an interesting background to say the least. And last Saturday, Sunnyvale Community Services had their craft fair and bake sale. And so this is something they have in the spring and in the fall. It's the SCS auxiliary team that does crafts, creates quilts, does baked goods to raise funds for Sunnyvale Community Services, and always happy to support them, buy a few things, as well as kind of celebrate what they're doing in the community. But yeah, I was there. Congressman Khanna actually dropped by, so good to see the hard work that they do, and raising some additional funds for one of our great service organizations here in the city. And then as far as this week is concerned, Monday and actually over the weekend, Governor Newsom basically decided to relax the drought rules in California, and especially since this winter has been filled with atmospheric river storms, flooding. There's a massive Sierra snowpack that'll possibly be the largest one on record by the end of the season. I think it's number 2 right now. But from that standpoint, it's state officials basically signaled that the end of the declared drought emergency will happen in the Bay Area and many other regions around the state. And we've been moving between extremely dry conditions for the last 3 years to the wet conditions that we've had this winter. But you never know whether or not those extremely dry conditions will reemerge in a year or two. So, so the Governor Newsom ended the state campaign asking people to voluntarily cut their water use by 15%. But, people should never waste water, of course. It's important it is a precious resource at the end of the day. And for me, it's critical that people still try to do the right thing as far as that's concerned. But we'll see where things go later this year, what the summer looks like. And, the snowpack this year has been fantastic. So, and lots of ski resorts will be open until July, they say, if not later, for the first time in years. So happy for those that are able to make it up and enjoying the slopes. And then on Tuesday this week, the storms and winds were back. It wasn't as bad this time, but it is kind of this weekly event of a day or two of heavy rains and large winds. We had a little bit of lightning also, but it's actually been good from that standpoint to see that we need the rain. I think people are a little tired at this point of the rain, and so let's see where the next few weeks go. I think we'll start to finally see some drying out, but you don't know how that's going to go as far as that's concerned. And then that's pretty much it for this week. It was a relatively light week. As I said last week, I won't be covering our weekly COVID numbers anymore. Things, unless things really change dramatically, COVID is kind of secondary now. I'm a little surprised to see as little masking as they do, but from my standpoint, it's been good to advocate on our city's behalf, at the county level. We're talking to our county supervisors, talking to county health. There's no plan to restart any of the testing or vaccination sites anytime soon, but all the healthcare sites, all the your healthcare providers, your pharmacies are still able to provide a certain amount of testing, and of course, the vaccinations or boosters as far as that's concerned. And the federal government is currently looking at what we're going to be doing as far as future bivalent vaccine boosters. So we'll see, I think there's going to be new direction being given sometime in the next week or two as far as trying to get people's, latest boosters, but that will be upcoming as far as that's concerned. Let me go ahead and announce some of the upcoming events. Tomorrow, of course, is April Fool's Day, so definitely be aware of some practical jokes out there on the internet. Around the city. You never know what you might see. And then on Sunday, one of our latest restaurants will be having their grand opening, and they have had a soft opening for about the last 2 or 3 weeks. But Top Dumpling, it's a new dumpling shop in the right at Sunnyvale Avenue and El Camino Real, in the Big Five Pete's Plaza. They'll be having their celebration at 11:30 a.m. On Sunday. So definitely join us if you can. But yeah, I tried it last week, and the food was fantastic. Definitely some flavors and some dipping sauces that I hadn't had before. Really good from that standpoint. So come join the fun. So that'll be Sunday afternoon. And then as far as April's concerned, lots of events around the city that I'll be highlighting later. But the big event, of course, is our Earth Day celebration. That'll be happening on Saturday, April 15th, from noon to 3 p.m. at the library. And so, it's our annual Sunnyvale Earth Day Fair. But it'll have lots of family projects, Sunnyvale focused activities, and resource booths from other organizations. There'll be youth crafting tables, so green, highlighting the environment and making sure what you can do from a sustainability standpoint. There'll be free safety checks for your bike from the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. There'll be, I think, zero waste chef cooking using, of course, induction burners. So if you haven't used an induction cooktop, we actually have them that are able to be checked out from the library. So if you've never tried one, that's one of the opportunities. And then, of course, there'll be guided tours for our tree canopy in the Civic Center. So definitely drop by if you get a chance. And so that's on Saturday, April 15th. And then we'll also be celebrating Arbor Day next month too. This year we'll be again planting from a generous donation from Iska, our sister city. We'll be planting another 10 flowering cherry trees at Braley Park. We did that last year. And, the Braley Elementary School students will be joining us to, basically help out and help, so learn a little bit about how to plant trees, how to appropriately center them, and, make sure that they grow. So our arborist, our parks team will be out there, digging the holes, doing the heavy work, but then, working with the students to place the trees into those holes, fill them, and put the appropriate support so that they don't blow over in the winds. But that will be happening on Thursday, April 13th at 10 a.m. at Braley Park. And then on Monday, April 10th, actually there'll also be a tree planting at 10 a.m. at Cupertino Middle School. So lots of Earth and Arbor Day events going on this month, and this being Earth Month as we declared last week. Definitely, it's get out into nature, enjoy yourself, and of course think about how you can conserve, how you can make your life more sustainable at the end of the day. As far as upcoming council meetings, our next meeting is April 4th, and this will be the first city council meeting in our new city hall. So if you've been thinking about visiting a council meeting and visiting our new city hall, this is your chance. It won't be in the city hall chambers. There's still some technical issues from getting some equipment that's been back ordered for a while now. but it'll be in the biggest conference room, the Bay Conference Room. So you'll be able to attend, you'll be able to see the City Hall from that standpoint. And then we'll start the evening by honoring several of our green businesses. So that being, this being Earth Month, or next month being Earth Month, definitely happy to honor some of those businesses that are really making a difference, really setting the example as far as that's concerned. And then we'll also have a special order of the day for Poetry Month. And I'm a big, the mayor is a big proponent for art and poetry. I think that really enriches our lives to a large degree. So we'll be having that proclamation. We'll also be looking at adopting the city manager's proclamation of a local emergency. So this is something that's come up in the last 2 weeks. But a combination of saturated soil and all the rainfall that we've had has kind of undermined one of the storm drain outfalls near Mockingbird Lane, right at Stevens Creek. And so where it discharges into Stevens Creek, approximately, I think, about 25 feet of the discharge pipe has been washed away. So we're also, look at, approving what we can do. So that state of emergency, declaring that state of emergency allows us to get a certain amount of FEMA funding. And lots of cities around us have already declared states of emergency, Los Gatos, Montserrano, Saratoga. They declared states of emergency just because of the number of trees that have fallen. So we've had lots of trees fall, but our staff has been able to keep up from that standpoint, and it's caused some inconvenience, but definitely it hasn't caused major headaches. And this is a major headache. So what we're going to do, what we can respond to, is really important as far as making sure that that discharge pipe for the groundwater for our gutter system goes into the Stevens Creek safely, and making sure that we kind of rebuild that area to make sure that it's safe. And then we'll also be approving a contract for a wastewater pollution control plant. So ultimately, this is one of the latest contracts to continue that reconstruction, that renovation of our wastewater treatment plant before it gets completely, out of, unsupportable. And it's become, over the years, it's become a lot more difficult to deal with 60, 70-year-old technology and getting it replaced in a reasonable time. And so this is our city's 20-year plan to completely redo that wastewater treatment plant, but it's working, it's continuing another contract as far as that's concerned. And then our next meeting after April 4th won't be until the end of April, as we take a few weeks off for spring break. So hopefully people are enjoying spring break with their kids or by themselves. Hopefully you're enjoying that. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. If you have any questions, just add them to the chat and I'll try to get to them. I had multiple early questions. David asked, I've started spring cleaning. When is the extra dumping weekend? So our extra dumping weekends, actually we had our first one last weekend, but for spring, and the next one was of course this weekend. So it's Saturday and Sunday from 8:30 in the morning to 4:30 p.m. And all you need to do is bring proof of residency for free disposal, and make sure if you have a pickup truck, making sure that vehicle load is covered. With uncovered loads, you'll be able to be provided with a tarp before you can come into the smart station, and that's like, I think, a $15 fee. So make sure if you're coming with a pickup truck, and make sure that it's covered. And vehicles are limited to 1-ton capacity, and trailers can't be more than 5 feet by 10 feet. So this is your opportunity to do some additional dumping, and if you've done some spring cleaning. Joanna asked, 3 limbs fell from our street tree and hit my husband's car. What do we do to make a claim? So sorry to hear about your problem. Lots of limbs have fallen, some trees have fallen, but if you need to make a claim, all you need to do is search for claims on the city website to declare that damage. And so taking photos, documenting it appropriately, that's really important. But there's a claim, a claim section on our city website. Alan and a few others asked last week, where's our electricity? It's been out for days, no heat, no light, please help. So, luckily, I think we've had fewer outages this week. Last week, lots of residents were frustrated with losing power. The Cupertino Unified School District Superintendent reached out to me. Stockholmeyer didn't have power for several days, and they were guessing it was going to be another week before that, at worst case, before that power was reinstated. And, I kept pushing PG&E and my representative, and finally they got the power back on. But, it's never easy for anyone, losing heat, not having refrigeration. But if you've gone without power for 48 hours or more, you're automatically qualified to get a payment from PG&E through their safety net program. And so you can go on the PG&E website and look for safety net. But you can also file a claim against PG&E for property damage, including miscellaneous losses, including food spoilage. You need your itemized list and some sort of receipts, and documentation. But if you basically things have defrosted and you didn't cook them, you don't have basically it's food spoilage, they'll take care of that. So you have the standard inconvenience payments. So $25 if you've been lost power for up to 72 hours, $50 for up to 96 hours, $75 up to 120 hours, or $100 over 120 hours. But you can also file a claim on specific losses that you would like to get paid back for. Last week, Roberta asked, is Olive Avenue finally going to reopen? So Olive Avenue did reopen last week, and you can also see some interesting bumps as far as that's concerned. So now, in that raised plaza in front where there's lots of pedestrian traffic, you actually have a bump that, so you do drive slow, do meet the speed limit, but they mark that as far as upcoming the triangle that the bump is coming up at the end of last week, I think. Excuse me. And then last week, let's see, Johanna asked, what happened to all the crows? So definitely, it's like if you talked last month, there were still thousands of crows in downtown, but the storms over the last few weeks have actually kind of dispersed the crows more so. So Mother Nature did what the city was unable to do to some degree. We still have a few crows around the city, but we don't have such an infestation downtown, such a large flock, and so, or a murder of crows, of course. But definitely, we've seen a lot less, and we'll see if they come back as we move into the summer months. But this time last year, we still had lots of crows here. We had them pretty much year round. They're supposed to be migratory birds, and they didn't really migrate last year. So definitely that might, Mother Nature might have helped solve some of our problems as far as the crows are concerned. Ron asked last week, any grand opening festival for the new City Hall? So there's a small ceremony at the beginning of next week for mainly the partners who helped, create the new City Hall. We're keeping that, because we have limited parking, and, it's still a construction site because we're currently tearing down all the old buildings. So lots of things going on as far as that's concerned. We're keeping next week's ceremony to relatively small. But the big event is scheduled for September. So September 23rd on a Saturday, we'll have State of the City, and then we'll have basically a day of events at the new City Hall. And by that time, we'll have torn down the old City Hall, the annex, the portable buildings, the Sunnyvale Office Park, and have added, more landscaping, native landscape, a new amphitheater, outdoor art. So it'll be very, very impressive. And then we'll have reinstated some of the parking that's currently closed down for staging from a construction standpoint. So definitely you can do your own tour if you want, but the big event will happen coming up in the fall. So, looking forward to that. Jim asked previously, will there be bicycle racks at the new City Hall? Yes, they're already getting good use, and I was able to take my bike over last week or last weekend. So, lots of bike parking there, and from the employee standpoint, there's safe bike parking storage, so the employees can also commute by bike, and I know that we have a good number of those that actually do that. Cynthia asked previously, what is Nixle? And so Nixle is, and I reported about this last week. Nixle basically is an app that, well, it's a website that will text you on local emergencies. And so all you need to do is text your zip code to 888-777 to opt in. You can go to nixle.com if you want, but that's the easy way to do it. And so when public safety reports a street closure or a missing person, that's one of the things that they utilize to basically, give you updates on what's happening at a local level. Last week, let's see, Christina asked, will there be any official tours of the new building for visitors? And so those tours will be part of that September event. So Saturday, September 23rd, lots of tours and, events and happenings that will be happening at City Hall at that point. Robbie asked, where do I report down trees? Especially important now that the ground is saturated. So for down trees in Sunnyvale, between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., you call 408-730-7506. And after 4 p.m., 408-730-7180. If you see down power lines, you can call that same number, 408-730-7180 or 911. Never go near a down power line, making sure that you stay far away, because especially in wet conditions, that can basically conduct to you, and people have been injured and killed because of getting close to down power lines. So be safe. Julie recommented, I love the art that you posted. Where can I learn more about art in the city? So take a look at the city's website and search for art. There's several art walks around the city, downtown, and different parts of the city. And there's a full listing of all the different art that we have in the city. So definitely take a look at that when you get a chance. Let me see if there's any questions. Garrick asked, we have a skunk in our area that sprayed the last 2 nights. What can be done? Let nature be. This is the 3rd time in the last month. So in general, let nature be. If you know of, if the skunk is in your yard or something, you can call animal control. Call the non-emergency number for the city website, 408-730-7180. And they will be able to basically get animal control out if it's actually there. They won't go out of the way to trap that. It's like between the possums and the skunks, they actually help take care of other rodents and vermin. So it's actually good. It's good from a community standpoint. Let's see, Garrick asked, does Sunnyvale have any slam poetry, written word monthly events? Or how would I start something like that? So I know that the library was doing poetry events, and so that's one of the things that that I actually talked to the director of library community services, whether or not they're willing to start that. A lot of this, they did have some, let's say, quarterly events pre-COVID, and a lot of this has been, put on hold because of the pandemic. So bringing that back will be a question, but they're currently, library services is currently looking at it. I think that's it for questions. So thank you everyone who joined me this week. It's been an interesting 3 years. We still live in uncertain times, and new issues are always coming up. But I want you to know that no matter what challenges we face them together. I'm proud of Sunnyvale and how our residents have responded to the pandemic and everything that happens in our city. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.